Earlier this week at the Tesla shareholders meeting, Elon Musk called out Cathie Wood and Ark Invest as having by far the best example of how robotaxis could play out as an income producing product and what that might mean for Tesla. He then famously today has followed Warren Redlich. And of course, I mentioned this morning in my video, Warren Redlich and I, back a year ago, were kind of competing for who could come up with the craziest, the wildest expectations, the wildest projections with regard to Robotaxi and with regard to Optimus, but even some other categories as well. And but now Elon has followed Warren. And then also, I think it was yesterday or earlier today, he pointed to Cern basher for Cern's analysis of the question mark on Optimus, whether or not they would be rented or whether they would be sold. And Elon says they will be sold and rented, but that they will be rented first. Once again, confirming what Scott Walter and I have said for 14 months. I mean, almost since the very beginning of the show, we've been talking about how it makes no sense at all to sell them in the early days. So lots of confirmation right now about what we've been saying on this channel and what the individuals who I invite on this channel have had to say as well. Well, I thought, what the heck, this would be a great time to take a look at what Cathie Wood said specifically, and that way we can see what Elon is talking about when it comes to believing that Cathie has the right idea. So we're going to share the screen here. Now, if you haven't already downloaded Cathie Wood's report, the big ideas for 2024, this is always a fascinating thing to read. It's very long. It's 150, 60 pages long. And, you know, sometimes it's okay just to look at the pictures. And by that, of course, I mean the graphs and the charts, and that'll help you a lot without reading every word. But let's go ahead. This is only about 10 pages here that we can go through and see what she's saying about the robotaxi business. She says, thanks to breakthroughs in AI, robotaxis are beginning to revolutionize urban travel and could accelerate the unraveling of the auto loan sector. Safer than human drivers, robotaxis hold the promise of safer and cleaner streets. Robotaxi platforms pioneers should enjoy the highest prices associated with early adoption, so the first person wins most. And according to Ark's research, robotaxi platforms could redefine personal mobility and generate $28 trillion in enterprise value during the next 5 to 10 years. So here's kind of how she lays it out. Autonomous ride-hail is likely to increase access to convenient point-to-point transportation. And she says that basically the cost of moving from point A to point B has not changed since the Model T. And you can see here where it was 70 cents a mile, of course, inflation adjusted, back in the time of the Model T, back in 1934, still 70 cents in 1950, still 70 cents in 2016. And now she's suggesting it will drop all the way to 25 cents in 2030. But as you'll see, maybe it's not going to be 25 cents in your neighborhood. We might be talking about India or China, be 25 cents, might be a little more here. But it's going to be dependent upon the time of day and all those kinds of things. She says that Robotaxi, Ark Invest and their team says that Robotaxi passenger trips annualized at a rate of about 2 million late last year. So this is what's already happening without Tesla in the mix yet. We have Baidu, we have Waymo, Tesla at zero, we have Cruise now, of course, at zero. They've pulled out of the market. And so she's saying that robotaxis are operating in 20 cities already with full driverless commercial options in 7 cities. Baidu is operating a run rate of 1.6 million autonomous miles. And Waymo has also got about 1/3 of those, so about 0.5, about 500,000 miles. And then, of course, Tesla, when they get into the business, will have a massive data advantage over these others. She says, of course, autonomous vehicles are safer than human-driven vehicles. They estimate that the rate of autonomous vehicle accidents would be 80% lower than those associated with human drivers, reducing the 40,000 auto-related fatalities per year by 80%, which would be, down to what would that be? About, yeah, okay, I should be able to do that in my head. 80% should be about 5,000 instead of 40,000. And then she says, in full self-driving mode on service streets, a Tesla appears to be 5 times safer already than in manual mode and 16 times safer than the national average for the overall all cars. So it shows here that Tesla with FSD can go 3,200 miles without an accident, and then human driverless Tesla 588 miles, Waymo 476, national average 192, and Cruise 43 before they dropped out. Then autonomous electric transport could save about 10,000 US lives per year lost to vehicle emissions. So we know air pollution and other kinds of pollution that come from automobiles. There are those who would say that it's associated with 9,700 deaths in the US annually. And of course, just switching to electric cars would save almost all of that. But then if you get 5 times the use out of a big portion of them by having them be robotaxis, then that would be even more. Then she talks here about large language models and generative AI should accelerate the progress in robotaxis. She talks about this in terms of all robots and what that generative AI is going to do. But overall, of course, the idea would be the more that you have AI helping to facilitate, where the car should sit and wait, or where it should go, and even telling you probably this would be a good time to put your car in service because there's a lot of activity right now, a lot of people requiring your car. There's so many ways that AI could be a big help in making this work. So she says that ride hailing is likely to create an $11 trillion addressable market. At 25 cents per mile, autonomous transportation could serve a wider population than human ride hail does today. And in the meantime, based on the value that consumers place on their time, demand at higher price points could be significant. So she suggests here on this chart that there's about a $34 billion business using existing addressable markets, but dropping the price down to between $2 and $4 a mile. Then you can go from there at 1 trillion addressable ridership if you drop the price down to $1. Now, if you drop it down to $1, that probably means Tesla's getting around 25 cents maybe on those miles that are on not the vehicles that they don't own. But of course, they're getting most of the dollar, maybe let's call it maybe 75, 80 cents out of the dollar on the ones that they do own. So then you've got, because Elon says there'll be both. There'll be owned vehicles as well as vehicles that you and I might own. And then there's $2.4 trillion non-commuting miles in higher income countries priced at 60 cents. So now this is kind of the breaking point for me. I talk about in terms of 50 cents, which is the next category, jumps from 2.4 just to 2.7 trillion. Long tail of demand priced where human-driven ride hail prices dropped to 50 cents a mile. All right, so 50 cents a mile, she's saying it's a $2.7 trillion market. This is, I talk about the fact I live about, I guess it's about 45, 50 miles from the beach. If I want to go down to the beach, and I figure that even my Tesla might be costing me 40 cents a mile between insurance and blah, blah, blah. Let's say it's 40 cents a mile, so that's $24 each way, $48 for a round trip to the beach. Of course, once I get there, I've got to pay for parking, which might be another $10 or something. So anyway, you get kind of the idea. Now, if I could ride hail, and if I only had to pay a little bit more, let's say 50 cents a mile for that trip down there, I would now have 50 cents a mile, would cost me times what I said it was, I forgot how many miles I said. Did I say 45? Anyway, let's call it 50 miles. We would be $25 each way, $50 total, and I wouldn't have to pay the parking. So I'd save $10 there. So basically, it'd be a complete trade-off. So if you just trade that off everywhere, whether I'm going just down to the movie theater or whether I'm going out to lunch or whatever, and I do it all by Robotaxi, now I don't have to own the car. I don't have to house the car. I don't have to worry about insurance. I don't have to worry about maintenance. I don't have to worry about anything. All of that's taken care of. And so I'm 100% sure that I'll do that because, as I've mentioned, we've already dropped down in our household to 1 car and figuring that we'll just use Uber if there's ever a time when both of us need it at the same time. So anyway, I think that's true. Oh, and then she says if it gets down to that 25 cents, then she thinks that the total market becomes 5 trillion. So there you go. That becomes a very large business. But each time now it drops in terms of what Tesla would get out of it, or what you would get out of it if you're putting your car out to rent. Okay, platforms facilitating the first 50% of urban autonomous miles should generate the bulk of the earnings. So she shows how the curve goes here, as those people that get into the business early are going to get the bulk of the earnings. And then the more and more people get into it, obviously the competition is going to drive down the price, and the use cases will drive down the price. Now, she talks about, and others have talked about, that we might see an increase in overall opportunity. In other words, people might want to go more miles than they do now if the price is 25 cents. So again, that trip to the beach at 50 cents and it's costing me $50 to go, that might mean I go, once a week. But if it was $25 for a round trip, maybe I go 3 times a week. You know what I'm saying? So, or even 2, which would be the same amount of money. So she says autonomous electric vehicle adoption could disrupt the auto loan industry. I think it's an interesting thing. Of course, it could disrupt the auto insurance industry. It could disrupt, obviously, public transportation. There's a whole lot of places that are going to get disrupted if this takes place. And then could create a 28 trillion in enterprise value in 2030. And so she's expecting those revenues to be around 2.75 million. The EBITDA at 200 million, enterprise value at 3.1. So 3.1 trillion. So anyway, and then this would be 2030. I'm trying to read it here real quick. How much of it will be, how it will be divided out. I see. So she's thinking that the autonomous electric auto manufacturers would probably be doing about 900,000. The fleet owners would be doing about 3.2 billion of that revenue. This is 900 million, 3.2 billion. And then 3.8 billion would be autonomous platform providers such as you and me. All right, and that's an enterprise value would be 28.1 trillion, I guess, with regard to you and me. Okay, so that's how she comes to her numbers. Let me know what you think about those numbers. I know that, again, Elon has said that he thinks those numbers make sense to him, or that they're the best that he's seen. Again, it's a little hard. This is hard to figure because you don't actually know how people are going to, make decisions with regard, will people go more places? Will they give up the family car? How many people will give up the family car? What will people like you and me that own a car? Will we put our car in service or won't we? Will we choose not to have other people muddying up our interiors? What do people do that have things that they're carrying around, like moms that might have 2 kids or 3 kids and having to put baby seats and all that in there? Or how does that get taken care of? Are there special cars that come in that regard? Or are the seating arrangements completely different, allowing for some special methods for handling that? So there's a lot of different things like that are going to be figured out over the next 6 years. But I thought you'd enjoy seeing exactly what Elon was talking about when he says the very best analysis that he's seen so far on this subject. So we'll have one more show later today. That will be the Tesla news. That'll be out probably, at about 4 o'clock, 4:30 California time. And then, of course, we'll be back tomorrow with a couple of shows, including the regular Sunday night show, which is called Monday Morning. And we'll talk about all the stuff that's coming. Next week is not going to be as dramatic as last week. And that might be good for all of us because maybe we need to have a little rest from that, all the drama from last week. All right. See you more later today. It's been great talking to you.